ਨਾਉ ਨਾ ਜਾਣੇ ਮੇਰਾ ਦਸਾਂ ਪਾਤਸ਼ਾਹੀਆਂ ਦੀ ਆਤਮਕ ਜੋਤ कलयुग के बोहे नाम के जहाज हलत पलत की रक्षा करने वाले धन 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 साहिब श्री गुरु ग्रंथ साहिब जी महाराज आपने अपार बख्शिश करके पातशाह साइबर संगत ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲਾਇਆ ਹੈ आपने अपने हुक्म अनुसार अपनी गुरमर्यादा अनुसार अपनी गुरमत अनुसार संतां ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਕਰਵਾਓ ਔਰ ਸੰਤਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਮਤ ਬਖਸ਼ੋ ਜੀ। ਸਹੀ ਪਿਆਰੇ ਮੇਲੋ, ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਮਿਲਿਆ ਆਪ ਜੀ ਦਾ ਨਾਮ ਚਿੱਤੇ ਆਵੇ, ਨਾਨਕ ਨਾਮ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ ਤੇਰੇ ਭਾਣੇ ਸਰਬਤ ਤਪ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਹਾਂਜੀ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਜੀ। Welcome to Khoj Gurbani once again. This is Ravinder Singh connecting with you from Columbus, Ohio, and I will be trying to moderate the session as best as I can. So far, we seem to have had some good luck. But before we start, some housekeeping items. We always remind ourselves as to what our goals are. First, to engage Sikhs globally to come together as Sangat Gurbani as an integral part of our daily lives. And second, as an offshoot of this discussion, to create what is called a crowdsourced commentary and translation expressed in contemporary idiom. So in other words, we are also trying to create resources that can become available to others should they desire to participate in this discussion. Again, this audience is pretty aware of our ground rules. You're encouraged to provide your own analysis based on your own experiences. We expect that we'll be frank and honest, but not disrespectful or antagonistic. Responses should be brief, no longer than a 2-minute at a time, and trying to stay to the point. Share your perspectives in small sound bites that will trigger or provoke interest or a logical query so that the dialogue or discussion can proceed. And as far as possible, try and stick to simple and straightforward everyday mode of conversation. So with that said, where were we when we left last time? So we've been engaged in, to set the context, we've been engaged in discussing the first Pauri of Japji Sahib, which starts with Soche Soch Na Hovai. And we've spent a fair amount of time discussing it. And this is a continuation of that discussion. So just let me very quickly set the context of where we are. I think we've all agreed pretty much that in this Pauri, Guru Nanak is essentially giving expression to our deepest human aspirations, which essentially is raising the most fundamental of all concerns, namely, Kiv Satyara Hoye, Kiv Kure Tutte Pal. It's pretty much setting what our purpose in life should be. And he starts off by examining existing religious practices that we talked about. And Guru Nanak concludes, and we all sort of agree with him, that the truth cannot be intellectually comprehended. And if you look at Soch as ritual bathing, that does not avail either. We also know that chuppe chup na hovai, the silence of meditative practices do not really assure quietude of the mind. Physical denial, again, does not really get you anywhere. And the avarice of acquisitiveness is ineffective as well. So for all of our religious cleverness, cunning, guile, the truth remains elusive. So his response to the question Kiv Satyara Hoye, Kiv Kure Tutte Pal is Hukam Rajai Chalana Nanak Likhya Naal, which is to attune ourselves to what he calls Hukam. And Hukam is what we are going to talk about tonight. The last point that I want to make based on our discussion is whether or not Guru Nanak was actually condemning these practices, or was he cautioning us, or was he advocating an alternative set of practices or methods? I think I would not be off the mark if I speak for all of you to say that it doesn't seem as though he's advocating an alternative set of practices, but what he's suggesting is that nothing short of an awakening or an altered state of consciousness, which will come about if we attune to what he calls hukam, will result in our walking in the will or being aligned to truth. So with that, I am going to now again follow the same sequence that I have. I'll go around and call on individual participants to, in the light of our discussion so far, at least set the ball rolling. And I think the question that we need to ask is, first off, very simple. So, we have talked about hukam being order, hukam being command, hukam having these various sort of nuanced meanings. We spoke about that. But what I want to do is allow the participants to actually sort of recapture their sense of what we discussed. So with that said, I will start with Ekunkar Kaur, who I can sort of see here visibly first, and then we'll go down the list. Ekunkarji, welcome to the discussion. Your thoughts.
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I missed the conversations last week, so. But Harvinder Singh Ji asked me to comment on Charan Singh's blog post, and my thoughts on hukam are pretty. I think about hukam a lot. Actually, I've been struggling with what it means for many years, and the thing that has come to make the most sense to me is that the command is for us to evolve and grow as a soul, and so everything that happens in our lives is under the command of what we're here to learn and what we're here to evolve into. And in that, hukam can be, the hukam for a life can be very grateful, or sometimes the hukam is to walk in shadow for a while and have a difficult time. But when I get into the essence of hukam, that it's really just about the command to evolve, to grow, to be able to act according to truth. It dissipates judgment, because whatever is happening in a person's life, it's all under hukam, and so it's all part of what they're learning, and their journey is about whether I understand it or not. So those are some thoughts that I have to add to the discussion, and I hope that was.
Thank you. No, I did read your blog, and a very interesting one, and I'm not sure that everyone on the panel has. I would recommend that, if you have some time, all of you, to actually go to the blog section of Khoj Gurbani, because I think Charan Singh Veerji has put some thoughts there, so has Ekunkar Kaurji, and I threw in a few queries myself, and I believe Siddhar Ravel Singh has put his thoughts, so it just kind of helps to be familiar with what's out there. But thank you very much, Ekunkar. I will now move on to, I see that Dr. Raja Singh is here. Would you want to make any observations?
Would I want to, or should I?
Both.
Or should I want to?
Both.
Let me pick up on what Ekunkar just said, and also on what we started the last meeting, which was my first session. If we look at that, whatever happens is in a sense part of hukam. Everything is, and that really takes us down the slippery slope of micromanagement. And if that is what God or Vaheguru were to do, then really we would have effectively no will to make a choice of our own. And it is like, man is born free, but everywhere he finds himself in chains. The freedom is limited, but still there is, because if there is none, then I can't be held responsible for what happens to me, or what I do or don't do. And if I'm going to be a responsible person, then I need to have some freedom to act, to change, and yet recognize that some things we have the courage to change, and many things we can't, so we have to have the serenity to accept unchanged as they occur, and to live every moment fully with an awareness of the choices we have, the choices we make or choose not to make. That's our responsibility, our karma, if you want to call it that. And to live each moment then fully and productively. And what is a full and productive message? That is ultimately the commentary on what you might, for us, might be the Sikh way of life, however we look at it. And so I would look at Hukam somewhat like that, walking in the shadow of God, if you wish, walking in will in the sense to do the best we can with life as we see it, and make the change that we see appropriate, and yet not be too worried about the fact that things didn't quite work out the way we wanted them to work out. So the issue of why me does not come in. Why
Okay.
all the bad things happen to me? So that does not happen. That's not the issue.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation, because I think that Ekunkarji, I think, was alluding to something similar when she said that
Yes.
walking in Hukam dissipates judgment. And I'm sitting
I'm
here.
not sure if it, Ravindra, I'm not sure if it dissipates it. It makes acceptance of the judgment possible.
In other words, you're not sitting
good
in
grace.
judgment of things. Yeah, I think the basic idea is the same here. And I was thinking, as I was listening to you and to Ekankar, that I think that is another way of saying that you do and act in the light of the circumstance that you find yourself in, and you just do what is under your nose, so to speak. And that makes sense. We'll come back to this. This is an interesting observation. I just want to give the others a chance to chime in. Charan Singh Virji, do you want to add to this? I know you put out a perspective on the blog. I'm not sure if everyone has read it. So if you would not mind just kind of share that perspective again.
Yeah, summarize it for us.
Hanji.
Yeah, thanks. My only take with the Hukam is that first and foremost, the Hukam dwells along. So if I am not experiencing the presence of Hukam along with me, then my first task is to experience that and connect that, or understand in what capacity, in what role, in what kind of relationship the Hukam is dwelling along. So I think my first inquiry is to see how can I understand and connect and feel the presence of the Hukam that is dwelling along with me. That's my first, I would say, first barrier to understand the Hukam. So it's a bujjan di cheez hai. It has to be inquired. It has to be. It's a riddle. कि वो मेरे नाल वस रहा, हाथ पैर नेरे है. Still I can't. What's lacking in me that is providing me a distance from him? So that's my first challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very interesting indeed, because since you bring up the word bhujan and the fact of how do I sense this presencing, I might as well throw in my 2 cents in there. That is really how I have sort of been looking at it. That Nanak Hukmi Je Bujhe is the word Guru Nanak uses, and it seems to me that he's suggesting the elements of a riddle or the element of a mystery here. But we'll come back to this. I want to go on to Dilpreet Singh Ji for now.
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਜੀ
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਜੀ
The way I see this one is, I think this is a framework or the processes which are existing for us, and these processes are fixed, but the results of these processes are not fixed. Sometimes those results can be situational, or sometimes can be the results, we can get the desired result, and we have a freedom of actions that we can make our own choices. It is not a micromanagement, but we have a freedom of our choices.
That's right.
And then it also it also says that, okay, some results we will get as it is, and some may be situational. Like I can take an example that the birth and death are not fixed. The birth we control when somebody is getting born. So it is not micromanaged that somebody or me, I have to born at this time. It was not predefined. It was a control. The hukam is the death has to happen. Now I can control somewhat that, okay, if I am having a good diet or I am doing good exercise, based on that, there is a chance that I can live longer, but then it might be situational also, that if some situation happens, that there may be some different results for that. So that is where it teaches us the acceptance of the result. And the Bujjanwadi girl is that we will keep learning. And Guru Nanak says that ida ant nahi paya ja sakda, that we will keep learning, we will keep exploring, and we will keep learning. And there is no complete definition of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hanji. Do we have Gurdeep Singh Ji from Montreal on board here?
Not yet, Ji.
Not yet.
Yeah,
I
I'm,
can't see him.
Who else do we have? I don't see him either.
yeah, I'm trying to connect Harinder Veer ji and Gurdeep Singh ji.
Acha,
I think
acha.
if you can chime in your version, I'm still trying to connect both of them.
Okay.
They're getting some error right now.
Okay. All right. So I really don't have a version, but I just have a few thoughts, which I've kind of thrown out there. So what I find interesting in this discussion is two or three themes seem to emerge. One is the one that Charan Singh Ji raised, that said, well, my first query is, I mean, how do I sense this presence of a hukam? How do I understand? How does it play in my life? I hope I'm articulating this the way that he meant it, but that's what I picked up on it. And the second is, he talks about Bhujan, which to me suggests that there is always in life an element of the unknown, regardless of how much information you might have at your disposal. When we, as Dilpreet Singh Ji said, the outcomes are never quite fixed in a way that we can predict them. We are free to take actions, and yet the outcomes may surprise us. Sometimes they may work out the way we want them to, sometimes they may not. Which brings me back to what Dr. Ajay Singh was saying, that, you know, if everything, I suppose what he is saying here is that if everything is predetermined, then there's really, it takes the fun out of living. Then I'm simply just sort of doing what I've been programmed to do, with very little free will, which absolves me then of any accountability, of any responsibility. And yet we know that there is a responsibility and there is accountability. Jawabdehi hai. So, and I think that to what Ekunkar Kaurji is saying, that the command is to really evolve and grow, which again suggests that this is an educational process. And that ties in with being a Sikh, doesn't it? I mean, Sikhi is a developmental process, as Dr. Ajay Singh has mentioned in his various writings. You stay on the process, and it really never ends, because it's a work in progress, and it goes on, and therefore, Hukam at some level remains a bit of a mystery. And yet, even though it cannot be described, it cannot be understood fully, it is certainly something that you can experience within the range of within the range of a human's framework. So I think, Ekunkar Kaurji, you mentioned something to that effect in your blog, where you said that, you know, we cannot grasp it intellectually, but perhaps intuition and some of our deeper feelings, we can sense the presence that Charan Singh Ji is trying to draw at. So I want to actually take this discussion down to now. I think, unless someone has anything else to add to this, let me throw that out first.
Let me add a sentence from an old prehistoric Christian prayer, I guess, where they say the infinite is one that our intellect cannot fathom fully, our senses cannot perceive entirely, yet with which our inner self, the soul if you wish, can commune with.
Yeah.
Yeah, so essentially, it is not, yes, it is not something that you can fathom intellectually, but you can sense it at some level.
And therefore, our finite words will not capture that infinite very well.
Yes, indeed.
It's
Yes, indeed.
not doable.
Let me suggest a measurement, a word which might resonate closely with Bhujana, and that word makes some kind of measurement, a more objective measurement, and draws a line that, okay, I have to research or I have to evolve up to that level. And that word is, for me, Bhujana means, I have used that word in my note also. Bhujana means work up till the exhaustion. When everything has been exhausted, as long as there are things happening which may or may not be the way I wanted, but when I reach to a stage where it is exhaustion, मैं पूरी तरह बुझ गया, I'm dead surrender, I'm totally grounded. That's the exhaustion level of bhujana to me, and that brings a little bit of measurement of to what extent we need to research and where we draw our final line. Does it make sense? Yeah.
Does anybody else want to do a follow-up comment? Ekunkarji, do you want to say anything?
Well, you know, in that respect, I was sitting here actually thinking about something you just said, and it's that we the notion of something being written.
You're cutting off a little bit.
Sorry. The notion that something is written on our forehead is something that comes up in Gurbani a lot, right? That we get what's written on our forehead, or things come to us based on what's written on our forehead. And in that sense, it's not that there's predestined, but there are things that the universe has arranged for us before we're born that come to us. And then the test of consciousness is what I do with what the Creator brings me. I mean, that I think it's this dynamic interplay. It's not a passive experience. It's that things come to me based on what's on my forehead, and then what I do with it shows where my consciousness is, and then the universe responds to what I do with it. And so this notion of understanding Hukam, to me, is about understanding that I'm in a conscious, dynamic, creative process with the Creator. And if I can see that and play with that and know my life is not about what I want, it's about what you're bringing me, and the test is what am I going to do with what you bring me, you know, then if I can understand that dynamic, that that's actually how life works, my ego will shut up because there's nothing for it to talk about anymore. It doesn't have a say in what that process is because it's between my soul and my Creator what that process is. Mm-hmm. So that's a thought to add.
Certainly. So, and I think that, you know, as you were speaking, the thought occurred to me that, you know, Guru Nanak has referred to creation as a sort of a play, karte ka khel rachaya. And, you know, when you play a game, it has some preset rules. Things happen, you know, you have to follow certain rules, you do certain things. And I think similarly, what you are referring to as being predestined or predetermined, perhaps the arena is sort of predetermined. We're in an arena that has been created for us to engage in a way that you described very beautifully. I certainly couldn't do it better. And that is what perhaps Charan Singh Ji is referring to as being, you know, playing it to the point of exhaustion, where perhaps all questions, intellectual questions, perhaps disappear at some point at a certain level. I'm not sure if I'm voicing your thoughts appropriately, but I think that is what I'm understanding here. So Dilpreet, do you want to add anything before we move on?
No, I am good with it. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're all kind of on the same page in terms of Hukam being this, you know, big creative regulatory agency that is the cause of this creation and somehow manages and controls and orders this, you know, creation, and that we are a part of this creation and so on and so forth. But I want to come to the point that Charan Singh Ji raised, and I want to make that my second round of question with you folks is, okay, so how do I presence it or how do I sense it? One. And related to that is, so why am I not being able to sense it or presence it? What's stopping me? What holds me back, or what prevents me, or what blocks me from understanding or seeing Hukam? Perhaps that might be the next round that we go to. So, so Ekunkarji, since we started with you, let's go back to you for this. What's the barrier here?
Sure. You know, so in my understanding and study, 20% of Japji is dedicated to this notion of sunya and mane, you know, listening and then accepting or obeying the command. And I don't think it's very complicated. I think that Hukam is revealed to us when we learn how to listen, when we learn how to open our senses at the deepest level, and we hear deeply. Then we can sense and know what Hukam is in my life in this moment and how to move. And that Guru Nanak gives us a two-step process. So learning how to listen is the first step, sunya, and there's all these gifts that come when you just figure out how to listen. And then the second step is mane, that there's got to be some part of my mind that actually agrees. Because a lot of times we can hear intuitively something, but then we don't listen, we don't obey it or agree with it, and later down the road we say, God, why didn't I listen to myself? And so I think Guru Nanak gives us a very human, real process that we can know Hukam by listening, and we can flow with it by obeying, but it's a total internal process that I've got to open myself up to hear. I have to agree.
So is this listening that you refer to different from the way we ordinarily listen through our ears? I mean, is it something else?
Yes, I think sunya is about, it's like when you meditate or you're doing Simran, you get into a deep space where your senses open up. It's not just about hearing the physical world, but sensing things on many, many levels, because as human beings we do sense on many levels. And that over and over in Japji, Guru Nanak will say, you know, listen, you know, let your mind become filled with love, find the bathing place inside of yourself and wash off the filth, that there's a unique kind of listening that comes through Simran and meditation that takes you to this deeper awareness.
Okay.
And that's what Sunya is referring to.
Thank you. We'll at some point, I'm sure, talk about Sunya and Mania, but that's interesting, that we perhaps have to be more attentive listeners in ways that we are not currently, in order to understand or sense or presence Hukam, which seems to suggest to me that this is really going beyond the senses. But before I carry on, let me jump to Dr. Ajay Singh. So, Dr. Ajay Singh, what seems to be the barrier here? What's preventing us? I know that Guru Nanak...
That's the question, you know,
yeah.
That'll come, but what Ekankar has expressed very, very clearly, methodically, is the difference between hearing and listening. We confuse the two words often, and they're not. They're very different.
Indeed. And to her point, not only is hearing and listening two different things, but listening, the deeper listening that she's talking about, is also I think it's pointing to awakening certain other senses within us, or abilities or capacities that perhaps lie dormant in our natural state. Would you agree, Ekankar, that I have expressed what you're trying to say?
Yes, I think that there's a process of, when you open yourself up to listening deeper and deeper and deeper, that it activates the awareness of the human being at levels that normal life doesn't give us. And that's why the practice in the Amrit Vela is so important, and Simran is so important, is because it cultivates that potential that everybody has, but that not everybody actualizes.
It becomes very, very quickly obvious when you listen to music that you enjoy. That's listening, and not just hearing the instruments clanging together.
Yes, indeed. And I heard Ekankar Kaur bring up the term Amrit Vela, which we will be coming to at some point in our dialogue. But for now, do you have anything else to add, Dr. Ajay Singh?
Indeed. Continue, please.
Okay, very good. Let me go to Charan Singh Virji.
I think when I read the notes of Ekunkar Kaurji on the blog, I was deeply impressed with her, and even now her use of word listening as a very important aspect, and I really appreciate that. And I just want to add that there is another version of this Pauri, or I won't say Pauri as it is in the uh, as a ladder sense. For example, gaviye suniye man rakhiye paw. That's another trio we can always address. So if I'm singing the Gurbani and I'm listening attentively to it, and then I have a reverence or surrender to the Creator who is dwelling along with me. That could be a possible uh, dot connecting the path as well. That's how I feel. Thanks.
Thank you, Ji. Dilpreet Singh Ji.
Anjivirji, the way I see this is, I think in this body only Guru Nanak Dev Ji has referred to some of the barriers that he is saying that the beliefs or rituals which we are following without understanding the how part of it, we just see everybody doing it and we keep doing it. So I think the barrier is that we are not questioning the status quo, and if we keep doing something without understanding the reasoning behind it, I think that is the barrier. That is what Gurbani all is teaching us, and that's how Guru Nanak also started his. He started questioning the status quo and tried to understand the reasoning behind it.
Hanji, thank you. I think you bring up something very important because it seems to me that in some sense we are all referring to the fact that we are stuck in the status quo. And so therefore we are not really listening because we are stuck in the status quo, it seems to me. So when we carry out rituals and follow beliefs without questioning them, we are really hardening, if you will. It's like hardening of the arteries. I mean, it's hardening of your mental structures that prevent you from listening. This is what I'm gathering from what all of you have said. And it seems to me that questioning of the status quo perhaps goes hand in hand with practicing listening. Would the panel agree that we have to do both? Dr. Vaisakhi Singh, would you agree?
Continue. I'll come back to it later.
Okay. Well, I mean, I've said my say. I'm just asking the panel to sort of see if I have actually captured what has been said here and whether or not there has to be a simultaneous process. One of dismantling the status quo, which to me is your own thought processes, and second is the more active listening process and methodology that we are talking about.
I imagine they travel together. I imagine the processes are different but not entirely isolated, and they occur together pretty much. One dominates sometimes and sometimes the other. And of course, it makes a real sense to us only when it transforms us, and that comes from listening.
That's right.
Not from just hearing.
Yeah.
Something that turns you on. And when that aha moment happens, that epiphany, we will know.
Yes. Thank you. Charan Singh Veji, I mean, I'm talking about, what's your thought on the fact that these are processes that sort of go side by side?
Well, my first step in these processes, or what triggers these processes, is the gaviye part, because when we sing the Gurbani, we are more likely to have it carefully listen will come the second stage. Although I agree that these are simultaneous process, but I think the triggering starts, and Guru Nanak has also prioritized Gaviye Pauri at a very next to this, and then eventually going to Sunna and Manana and subsequent these two processes. So to me, Gaviya is the priority process that triggers the listening as well as Manana and Pau, all those other chains
So
overlapping.
how do you get somebody to start Gaviye?
Gaviye precisely, it doesn't mean to sing in a like a musician. It is ras like a Bani has some signs, and when Gurbani is written, it has uh, it has some kind of symbols which we call lagamatar that indicates how that particular word has to be gavya jaye, like the u matra definitely, or with a more a stress on some word or some vowel or those type of things. That to me is different than simply reading the Guru, simply reflecting upon the Guru, getting more drenched into it through those lagamatra. To me, that unfolds a very profound listening experience also when it is sung at that pace and at that level. So for me, Gaviye triggers everything.
So let me ask you this. I mean, for somebody who is perhaps quite caught up in his day-to-day existence and is basically living with the status quo, and is struggling perhaps at some level to find answers or to move the needle in terms of evolution and growth, how do you address this to an individual like that? I'm trying to just sort of get that sense, because not everybody is equipped to Gaviye Gurbani. I mean, a lot of people I know don't even know how to read the script. How do they do it?
Yeah, to me, that's the prior condition for the Gurbani. That Gurbani has to be sung, or from singing, I don't mean that you have to have all those technicalities or all those ragas or the rhythms, but to enjoy the richness of the Gurbani, wherever there is a there is a there is an indication to have more stress, one should stay there rather than rush up with that. That's how I feel. That means Gaviye, not just by the tal and the all those type of rhythms. The whole body is in a natural rhythm, right? And that rhythm
Yes.
is yeah. So when we try to um, when the as a beginner we try to match those two rhythms with our singing as well as the body rhythms inside, I think we are closing towards that listening which Ekunkarji was mentioning as a advanced stage of listening. So to me, the prior condition is the richness of singing, not from the musical point of view, but uh, from the indications of lagam matra which are associated with the alphabets of a word.
So is the condition then that one must know how to read Gurbani in Gurmukhi? I mean, is that the precondition then?
I won't say that also, because
But I mean, how I'm just trying to follow this. If you're saying Gaviya is the trigger and Gurbani is what you're doing Gaviya on, then it follows that well, then knowing how to do that becomes a precondition, right?
no, not exactly, not exactly. What you want is, okay, when I'm with my girlfriend, I want to spend more time with her. When I'm with my wife, I need to have more and more intimacy with her. That's the type of thing I'm trying to say. That generates the gaviye, not just the knowing. It flows from you. The love for Guru should flow from you, and that is the gaviye pattern. And then you don't rush up with the pronouncing or reading or
So another follow-up question.
I think there is you can't really put the emphasis on the lagamatra, really, because that leads you to a different meaning of gaviye. The gaviye in Gurbani perhaps occurs in two different meanings. One, of course, is to do the kirtan according to musicology, the rules of musicology. And many people can do that, and some people are tone deaf and they couldn't.
Yeah.
They can't to save their lives. Now that music has its own magic, and the meaning and the substance will get into you faster or different or whatever way it is. It can move you. The music can move you, and we know that.
Yeah.
And it's a very powerful way. But ultimately, then Gurbani is really talking about not what shall I say? Anhad Bani. Huh? The music of the
unspoken
unplayed
Yeah.
Instrument of within that you vibrate to. And that ultimately is what you're really talking about, and we need to separate the two meanings.
I actually
get to that level.
Your point is well taken,
Yes,
Dr.
yes.
Ajay Singh. But and Charan Singh Viji, I'll let you speak in a moment. But because
By the way, let me interrupt you for a moment. When Dr. Ajay Singh na kaho कि Dr. Kandan, then I'm going to send you bills.
I'll be happy to receive
for services not rendered.
Not rendered. Yes.
Don't do that, please. Okay.
And then Charan Singh Viji. Okay, so now I'm following what you're saying, because I get the point of the rhythm of, Sahi Ucharan and the rhythm that comes with it and what it can do to you physically, just like Gavi as in music that was talked about a little while ago. So I get that process. What I'm really driving at is this presupposes that you have to be able to know Gurbani. You need to know that script, because Punjabi jira nahi ga sakda, jira nahi pad sakda, ਹੁਣ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਤੇ ਆਨੰਦ ਆ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ, ਲਗਾ ਮਾਤਰਾ ਦੀ ਸਮਝ ਥੋੜੀ ਬਹੁਤੀ ਜੀ ਟਾਈਮ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਆ ਗਈ ਹੈ, ਬਟ ਜੇ ਇਹ ਮੈਸੇਜ ਯੂਨੀਵਰਸਲ ਹੈ, then is that really the trigger, or is Gavier broader than just that?
That's why I'm trying to say it. Let's take the broader meaning.
I know where you're going. Yeah,
Can Car jump in here for a second?
I'm sorry.
Can Car jump in on this for a second?
Yeah, please do. I was going to come to you. Yes, please do.
Because my life is filled with people who don't need to understand Gurbani script to get the experience of Gave. I mean, I think one of the things we get lost about is that in Guru Nanak's time, he was radical because he sang in the song of the common people and helped them awaken through their own language. And the challenge we face today is how do you not let Gurbani become this archaic script that only a few people can ever understand? How do you take it so that people can have an experience in their own language? And so I think it's perfectly acceptable to do poetic translations of Gurbani and get people singing in poetic translations to open them up. I think Gurbani is ultimately the most powerful tool when you do it exactly as the Guru wrote it. But you've got to remember, we have to bridge to everybody where they're at. That's what Guru Nanak was about. And so taking a couple, like for me, I'll write a poetic something and put it to guitar and add a couple Gurbani lines and go back and forth and get people into the spirit of singing, and it opens them up and they feel something without Gurbani being this huge mental barrier that, oh my God, I can never do it until I know how to read the script and pronounce everything correctly.
Point well taken. Point well taken. And I was trying to drive, but I'm actually going further than that also. But I'll hold off for now. I want to go to Dilpreet Singh and see what he has to say.
Right. I want to add something to the barrier part, right, which we were discussing earlier.
Mm-hmm.
To the barrier part, I also think that if we believe in something and we don't understand it, and that way we are stopping at some point, and then that stop becomes a barrier because it disconnects us from the brightness, and that closes us. And then because Gurbani says that we should always be open for discussion, and this believing something without understanding closes us and disconnects us from learning something further, and that is how I see that as the barrier.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Very interesting, very interesting. We have about 10 minutes left, and I think we have time for another round. Harvinder, are you on?
Yeah, Hanji, I am here.
Is anybody else? Come on, have I been missing people?
I think there's some issue going on with the Google Hangout. I think Gurdeep uncle and Harinder Singh, they tried a lot of time, but they were not able to connect. So I was busy with all that thing. But I think for now, today we only have right now 6 participants.
Okay, okay, okay. So then let me just jump off of this discussion and go, because I think one of the questions that was submitted, which I want to at least briefly touch on, is surrender to the will, which we've talked about, but there was another question that I'm looking at that came through the email system. We want to talk about what is karma. And there's another one, does submission equate to placid contentment? Let's start with that one. I think that terminology sounds very familiar to me, placid contentment. I may have used it somewhere. So does submission equate to placid contentment is the question. And let's go to Ekunkarji again. Let's do a quick round on this. So when we say we have to submit to Hukam, does that equate to placid contentment?
Well, not for me, it doesn't. I mean, the way I wrote about it in the blog post was that I think submission is a constant fight. I think the mind is always playing its games and rebelling, and submission is just a constant, struggle with your own mind to stay intuitive and keep bowing even when it doesn't make sense, even when you're not sure where you're ending up. And so I think submission for me is a very active, dynamic, it's a practice of continual presence, because the mind is always changing and you're always having to engage the mind to get to that place of obedience and surrender.
Okay, thank you. Hanji, Ajay Singh ji.
Well, as I started earlier, I agree entirely with what Enkokar said. And as I said earlier, Hukam is an active process. Following Hukam is an active process. And living in Hukam is an active process. It's not a passive submission to whatever God will has happened to me and that's it. The option we have is to make intelligent choices, well thought out choices, and do the best to achieve them. And then when they get modified by fate or whatever you want to call it, circumstances, to accept the change with good grace, elegance, to accept that elegantly, change direction, and not be harping on it. So acceptance, to my mind, is also therefore an active process. It is not a passive thing. To say that this is the best I could do with what I've got, or I could see, and I must now accept it as a reality and move on with a positive frame of mind to a different direction, or modify what goals are, or whatever. That's the way I look at it.
Thank you very much.
So therefore, living in Hukam is an active process, and you got to live it, live each moment of it fully, each moment of it.
Absolutely.
Fully
Absolutely.
and actively.
And I would suggest.
And then whatever will be. That's why I said I quoted the old Greek prayer: God grant me the courage to change the things I can, the serenity to accept what I cannot change, and the wisdom to know the difference, which is the hardest part.
Absolutely. So whatever will be reminds me of that old song.
Yeah, ke sara sara.
Ke sara sara, right? So, yeah. Okay. Charan Singh Veer ji, as we come to this, is it placid contentment?
Yeah, I agree with both the panel members. Gurbani is more dynamic. It's not placid. It's not a surrender in any negative sense, but it's more positive, because Guru has been assuring me that the Hukam is dwelling along with me, and Guru can connect me to that. So it's a assurance through the Guru, and then knowing that yes, this is the process that has a certain results, doesn't make it in any way anything a meek surrender. Yeah.
Thank you, Dilpreet Singh.
And I think everything has been well said. Just one short thing, as Gurbani says, "Ki tera ant na paya jaye."
That's right.
So submission is a continuous learning process for me. That it is a continuous learning process Once we are submitting, we are open, and that's how we will learn, and we will keep learning more and more.
Thank you very much, all of you, and I think
Yet we will keep learning more and more, and yet the job will never end.
yes, it's an ongoing process, a
That's what
never-ending
Sikhi is about.
process, and I just want to sum this up. Obviously, just sheer observation will tell you that the world around us is not a passive place. In fact, Ajay Singh and I were talking just earlier about change and the fact that we are changing continuously. I mean, it is happening as we speak. We've all changed since we first came on. So I think the net of what we are saying is that it is not placid contentment, meaning it is not fatalism. In fact, I think Guru Arjan somewhere does mention that we have to be active co-creators in advancing evolution. So it can never be passive. It can never be placid.
Uddam Karendiya Jiyo Tu.
Uddam Karendiya Jiyo Tu. And so with that said, I think this is a good place for us to stop. We have about 5 or 7 minutes left. And rather than trigger off something else now, I want to thank you all for your contribution. Much appreciated. And we will try and get the summary of all of this put out on the blog. But I think this has been a very useful, very productive, very meaningful, and for me, very educative discussion. Just one last round. If anybody wants to add anything, say anything, bring up a question, feel free to. So let's go. It's open. Okay, very good. In that case, thank you again, and hope to see you on Saturday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vaisakhi.
Vaji Khalsa, Vaji Fateh Ji.